Getting to the top of the dome isn't just an elevator ride. You're walking thousands of steps to get up to the dome. And if you're afraid of heights, this is not the tour for you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a special guest, Melissa Dargan. And our topic for today is on how to give an amazing Capitol tour. Melissa and I are both former Congressional intern coordinators as well as tour coordinators. Melissa, would you like to talk a little bit about your company and what you do?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Melissa Dargan. Thanks so much, Victor, for having me on and for inviting me to do this awesome collaboration about Capitol tours. And I started my own company called Tour Tracker. And this is where it comes full circle because Tour Tracker is a digital platform that helps members of Congress book tours of Washington, D.C.
And so when you have a free moment, go check out Melissa's channel. She gives some great advice on financial things, especially on the TSP. She talks about how to get an internship on Capitol Hill. She has a lot of great tips on home buying and other personal finance related pieces of advice. Let's get this video started. But before we do, please hit that like button if you enjoy this video and subscribe down below to my channel and head over to Melissa's channel so we can get her monetized.
And monetize Victor!
So with that being said, let's get this video started. If you stay to the end of the video, Melissa and I are going to share some special locations, exclusive, that only congressional staffers can go to on their Capitol tours. And so you don't want to miss this. If you're interested, stay tuned.
So with tours and Capitol tours, there are three different types. There's the staff-led tour, which is when the member office themselves, whether it's the tour coordinator or the interns, leads the tour from the beginning of the office all the way through the Capitol and takes the constituent basically on this one-on-one VIP tour. And then there's the Capitol Visitor Center, CVC only tour, where you just book the tickets for the constituents and then have the constituents go straight to the Capitol Visitor Center where they'll go on a docent-led professional tour. The Capitol Visitor Center does hire professional individuals to take these massive tours around. With fun fact, if you ever hear something about like the red coats, it's because the Capitol Visitor tour guides wear red coats. Then the third type is a hybrid type, where they let the constituents come to the office and they show them the member office, and then they walk the constituents underground through the Cannon Tunnel into the Capitol Visitor Center. And this is where the staffer can say, look at how interconnected all of the buildings are. Everything leads into the Capitol, and they take constituents into a place that constituents aren't just able to wander into.
It's important to keep in mind also, if you are a staffer or an intern giving tours on the Capitol, to figure out if that's your responsibility. Some offices really prefer to be more engaged with the tour process, so they want to give more staff-led tours. Other offices are busier, or they might not have enough time to be engaged. And so what they do is they simply just book the constituents on a red coat or professionally led tour.
The one thing I will say for congressional staff who are thinking, maybe the office lets you choose whether or not it's going to be staff-led or CVC only or hybrid. A staff-led tour by the office, that is pure engagement. For the next 45 minutes to an hour, you are taking the constituents on a privately led tour. Some great things are, again, one-on-one interaction, but I will say that that can take up a lot of time. And sometimes during the summer and the high seasons of tours, you can have up to 10 to 15 different tour groups visiting your office in one day. You really have to consider what's best for your office, because if you have 15 tours coming in one day, and let's say you're the only one that's able to give them, you may have to think, hey, is it better to just send them to the CVC and get them on a professional-led tour? Or are you able to allocate maybe 45 minutes to an hour per tour? Because at the end of the day, I know that many staffers have a ton of other responsibilities that they need to get done. It's really a balancing act.
Capitol Hill, there is a tour coordinator listserv. Basically, all of the people who have to manage tours, they have a whole listserv. And so we share with each other different resources that are helpful. And so there was an Excel sheet that was shared to me that I thought, oh my goodness, this is awesome. When a request usually comes in, it's by phone or it's by a form that constituents fill out on the website. And then you just take that information and you put it onto the Excel.
And as a tour coordinator, you're not only doing tours as your only job, at least in the House side. And sometimes in the Senate, you have other responsibilities as well, right? But you want to find the best, most efficient way to handle it. If you're spending 12 to 20 hours a week on average, this was again prior to COVID, managing and handling tours, booking it, handling constituents, emailing them their itineraries, that's a lot of time on administrative things where I bet you wanted to come to DC to do more. When I was in business school, one of the projects I was tasked to do was innovate an industry that I knew. At that time, the only industry that I worked in prior to going to business school was government, Congress. So I went back and I monitored a number of my friends who were, booking tours still or still working in a congressional office to find inefficiencies. And I saw this one. Right now, Tour Tracker is the only digital and, in my opinion, best solution to helping manage tours and tracking them.
It's important to know when there's high demand for tours. And it's not really rocket science. If folks really just think hard, they can probably figure it out. I'm sure some of you have already thought this through before. But generally, when tours are happening, the high demand seasons are in the summer because folks like to travel during the summer and because schools are out during the summer. Any time period where there is a break. So winter break, spring break, all heavy times where there's a lot of tours. When you have a lot of tours coming in, you need to make sure that you prepare and prepare as in warn the constituents that, hey, if you are doing a staff-led tour, you got to arrive early. Or to really hammer to them, hey, when you are coming here for a tour, you need to make sure that you stick with the dates. It's very hard for me to change what the days are like. If you are going to give them a tour personally, a staff-led tour, then you need to make sure that you have ample coverage that day, but also it's a good practice to have the constituents meet you at the Capitol Visitor Center.
And in order to find them, because obviously you probably don't know what this family or this tour group looks like, pick a common statue in the Capitol Visitor Center and say, hey, meet me at the Statue of Freedom or the astronaut statue or whatever statue is easier for you to identify that you believe the constituents can find in the Capitol Visitor Center check-in area itself. And that's just something to think about because I can only imagine as things start to reopen, security lines will probably be a lot more tight.
When there is high demand, understand that you can use other tour coordinators and other offices as your resource. Sometimes offices will book a slot in the Capitol Visitor Center booking system and their constituents don't show up. And so a lot of times you can trade tours, reach out within the listserv and be like, hey, I'm just curious, does anyone have any open slots for 2:00 this Friday? I have a VIP constituent coming in. I really want to make sure that they're taken care of. And someone might reach out and say, yeah, I booked 15 slots and only 13 people are going to show up. Making sure that you develop strong relationships with your fellow tour coordinators and other congressional offices and exchanging tours when you need to meet the demands during those high demand times.
If we haven't stressed this enough, I'm going to highlight it again. Get on that tour coordinators listserv that exists because it will be a lifesaver, not only for the Capitol tour, but other tours that you will book for the office. And just even, hey, if you end up with a couple, extra slots because your constituents canceled, open it up.
What's the alternative when you aren't able to secure a ticket in the Capitol Visitor Center? And I think before we dive into that question, I'll just give a little synopsis of how that system works because I'm not sure if we actually went through it. So basically what happens is the Capitol Visitor Center, at least to my knowledge, before COVID, they basically have a system where every congressional office has access. And what they do is they book tours. And in the system, you tell them, hey, like, I want this to be a professionally led tour by one of the redcoats, or I want this to be a staff-led tour.
Let's say you're looking for 16 tickets. What tour time has 16 tickets available? And then you just click that. You're like, great, book it, put your name or put the constituent's name or the group name, and then book it. And then it'll print out or have a printout of the ticket itself, where a number of times offices will send the copy of the tour ticket that says you have 16 tickets and the name or reservation is under Mr. or Mrs. Smith. And then if the constituent is going straight to the Capitol Visitor Center, they can just bring this paper and then pick up the 16 tickets at the front desk. Or if the office is doing a staff-led tour, they'll have the paper printed out, bring it with them when the constituent comes to the office, and bring it to the front desk when they get to the Capitol Visitor Center.
What are the alternatives when you don't have tickets, essentially? The member of Congress can basically get as many people as possible into the United States Capitol. Again, that might change because security has changed drastically since I was working on Capitol Hill almost a year ago. The second thing that you could do is if it's a session day, you can get what they call as an escort badge. And I believe you can do this on the House and the Senate side. And so what happens is you can get an escort to one of the rooms in the United States Capitol. The most common one, at least on the House side, is the Rayburn Room. Not the most ideal, but at the very least, they can walk around the House chamber, and they can also walk to the Rayburn Room, which is a spectacular room named after Sam Rayburn, one of the speakers of the House. The other thing is you can trade for tickets. As we mentioned before, getting on that tour coordinator listservs is so helpful. And so you can just reach out to your peers and see if you can get some tickets. You know, one thing also is if you go early enough in the Capitol Visitor Center, I think it's like 8 a.m. or something crazy, but there's like the first tour that goes out, they will take anyone. And the reason why is because not everyone shows up for the earliest tour. And so what the redcoats, the professional tour givers, have told me is that if you ever have a constituent that you just cannot get in, just tell them, hey, go to the Capitol Monday through Saturday, anytime at like 8 a.m., they are almost guaranteed to get in.
So I'll add on to that. An alternative to if you can't find any more tickets that you can book on the online platform, a staffer can go with the constituent, fall in line at the CVC, and pick up day of tickets at that time that they're there. That's one option. I will forewarn you that the line for day of public tickets can be long. The other option is you can just let the constituent know they themselves can go straight to the Capitol Visitor Center, and there are open public tours. They just also have to fall in line. There is a difference between a staff-led pickup tour where there's a line particular for staff, which is typically shorter than a line for just random constituents who are showing up. It's like really, really long if you just have your constituent go themselves, and maybe they'll go in really early and not face a line. But by the time it's like midday, that line can get really long. There are times where an emergency session of Congress may be called and the vice president is coming to the Capitol to preside, and they will shut down tours, or there's some big ceremony that's going to happen, or the lay in state when a big prominent political figure passes away, and then they're going to shut down the whole Capitol because they're going to do this procession where they lay the casket in the middle of the rotunda and let the public come in to say their, like last goodbyes. And they won't do tours those days. And you can't control that. You really just have to think on your feet where you're going to take them and what you're going to show them. And this is about you now knowing the Capitol, you being able to give tours. And even if you're an office who sends most of your tours to the Capitol Visitor Center and letting the docents lead it, I think it's very important you as a tour coordinator and having your interns go on one of those docent-led tours themselves you need to know the Capitol like the back of your hand. You need to know some of the stories and some of the historical significance, because your constituents will ask you questions. And if you're like, I don't know, but here's a statue, I'm pretty sure that's not going to go over well.
I think that's a great point, because the Capitol Visitor Center offers those tour trainings, but I think nothing ever supplements just going on a tour yourself, because you will go on a tour and sometimes the tour coordinator will say something and you're like, oh, that's quirky, that's fun, like I got to share that too. Like, one thing that I would recommend to a lot of staff assistants is, if you're managing interns, have your interns give each other tours. Like, literally just have a group of them on like a Friday, just out of session day or fly out day, just like walk around the Capitol and just give tours. Be like, oh, like this is the crypt. There are 13 statues here for the 13 original colonies. Those are just things that you will get with repetition and over time. Like, I'm sure you still remember some of those, Melissa.
And then to go along with like do's and don'ts, I think something to keep in mind is that the Capitol does have a number of restrictions, and this is where you have to consider with what the constituents are bringing, their gear, their food, maybe beverages, because let's be real, if you're going on a day full of tours and you're with a family, I bet you the mom or dad will have a backpack full of snacks for the kids, because those little ones, they're always, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, and you have to be ever prepared, like the Mary Poppins backpack. And the reason why we call this out is because the Capitol doesn't really allow food into the visitor center, or at least when we were, or at least when I was a tour coordinator, and I think Victor, if it was the same for you.
I'm sure it's going to be the same when they open up the Capitol for tours, because can't expect people to be bringing beverages.
You may want to consider that as the tour coordinator, of offering the ability to like stash it while they're in the Capitol tour, and then have them come back for their like granola bars after.
You do end up having constituents leave their heavy winter gear or their snacks in the office. Make sure you tell them, hey, our office is closing at 5 p.m. Yeah. Because that's happened to me before, where I've told someone, hey, like, you can leave your stuff at the office, and they forget that the office is going to close and go off and get dinner or something like that. Make sure also that you let all your other staffers know where constituent stuff is going to be stored, because sometimes if you're not in the office and the constituent comes back and the other staffers don't know where their stuff is, then you're going to get a lot of frantic phone calls saying, hey, where did you leave this person's stuff? Also, one of the tricks, especially for winter gear, is let the constituents, or ask the constituents, hey, where are you going to be after the Capitol tour? If they know for sure they're coming back to your office, then yeah, of course, by all means, leave your coat in my office. But if they're going to be somewhere else, like they have to catch an Uber, their flight is in like, at 4 and their tour is at 2, like maybe it's better to have your coat on you so that you don't have to walk through the cold or miss your flight going to retrieve your coat. And this happens all the time, because sometimes constituents will be like, oh yeah, I'll leave my stuff in the office. And then later they'll be like, JK, like, I don't really want to go back to your office anymore. And if it's a winter coat there, then that sucks. If it's like food, then, I can't tell you the amount of like M&Ms and pretzels and, like banana chips that have been left behind. I'm just like, cool, like, I guess I got extra snacks for this week. Now we can move on to our secret special locations that I know everyone is excited to know about.
Yeah,
to kick it off?
Yeah, so the secret special locations that you want to know, that you can either go visit yourself, take VIPs, or just take families that are interested, and if you have the time to do it, show them these secret special spots that are off the beaten path of the actual Capitol tour. First of all, you have to know where they are. So before you like promise to take a constituent there, make sure you yourself have wandered around with your staff badge to like know where the crypt is. Because then you're going to be able to, make your constituents feel special and say, hey, I'm going to take you to this really cool location, and then be able to share that with them. Just note, in some instances, some of the places we're going to list may or may not be available. One, for some security measures sometimes, or two, in session versus out of session. The House floor, which is one of the places that this is a secret, special, cool thing. Usually you can give constituents tickets to the gallery, which is where they sit up at the top and view the House floor. What's really cool is that out of session, you as a staffer can take up to 6 people onto the House floor a day. And I'm pretty sure the rule is per office, one staffer can take up to 6 people per day.
Correct.
Onto the House floor when it's not in session. So when members are not voting, when there's like nothing really happening, you're able to do that.
The second one that we would love to share with you all is the speaker's balcony. Access to the speaker's balcony really varies based on who the speaker is. But starting with Speaker Paul Ryan in the 114th Congress, he opened it up to basically anyone who is a full-time professional staff. So I'm going to repeat that. If you're a full-time professional staff, so sorry interns, you can bring any amount of individuals onto the speaker's balcony, which offers a beautiful view of the mall, and you can see basically all the way into Rosslyn, Virginia. The speaker's balcony is only open when the House of Representatives is out of session, and also at the speaker's discretion.
And it's incredible views. I mean, the speaker's balcony is one of my favorite locations in the Capitol. And I would definitely say if you have the ability to take, constituents during a tour or, any VIP. Third secret special location that is important to know about is the dome tour. And these are a lot harder to get. One, because if you are scheduling them, either your member of Congress or the designated person, typically the chief of staff, are the only people who could take constituents on a dome-led tour. And there is a cap in the number of people who can even go on the tour. And I think it's like maybe less than 6 or less than 10, but it's a certain cap number. The dome tour is really cool. You go to the top of the dome, and that's one of the highest points in Washington, D.C. But you have to keep in mind that getting to the top of the dome isn't just an elevator ride. You're walking thousands of steps to get up to the dome. And if you're afraid of heights, this is not the tour for you to give or a tour to put a constituent on.
The other location that we thought we'd share with you all is a subway system, an automated subway and a manual subway that you always have access to, and you can ride it basically from the Capitol to the automated one goes to Dirksen and then Hart, and then the manual one goes to Russell. And so usually what I recommend folks do is ride the automated one if they're curious about the automated one. And then if they are looking to get lunch at, say, Union Station on the Senate side, then ride the manual one.
Another place is the crypt, where it was initially, so when you go on the Capitol tour, they'll say like, this is where Washington was supposed to be buried. But you find out later, and even though they call it, the crypt, Washington is not buried there. He and his wife are buried at Mount Vernon. However, there is an area where they had basically carved out underneath where that star is, where they show you like, this is the center of Washington, D.C. Underneath that, there's the crypt. You can find out how to walk and get down there and see the empty crypt.
Another place that we want to share with you all is the Rayburn Room. And the Rayburn Room is a really unique place in the United States Capitol. A lot of times it's used by members of Congress to take meetings if they are about to vote. It's also used a lot of times for different receptions. I know that members of the Congress hosted the Dalai Lama in that room when he came to visit the U.S. Capitol. And so sometimes they'll have fancy dinners and different events there. They'll have receptions there. It's named after Sam Rayburn, who is a former Speaker of the House from Texas. And also he has a building named after him as well. So he's very popular on Capitol Hill. One of my favorite Easter eggs is by the entrance of the old Supreme Court chamber, there's a cornerstone. By that door, there is another door, and that door basically, opens up and there's offices. But if you open that door, there's a cornerstone that's on the ground. And from my recollection, that's not like the original cornerstone, but it's a replica cornerstone. But it's still pretty cool because they laid it there. Once you exit the old Supreme Court chamber, if you look really closely on the ground, there are cat paw prints.
Paw prints,
And
yeah.
that's because there was a time where there was like a rodent infestation going around the Capitol, and so they kept cats in the Capitol. And basically, you know, they must have left some imprints on some concrete that they just laid down. So I thought those are two really cool insights. You actually have one too. After the floor tour, what's the thing that most people ask you about?
Oh, there are these little doors that you'll see them when you go on the Capitol tour. Well, you may see them if you pay attention. There's these little doors that are on I guess like on the wall, but closer to the floor, and it's really tiny. I remember I'd always get asked like, what are these doors for? And again, this is where I was misled by my like readings. And it was like, oh, it's for the Capitol puppies and cats. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because I had heard about the paw prints, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I guess like the animals, you know, they use these doors. Come to find out that's not the case, because Victor, why are the doors there?
So Roll Call did a great article on them a couple years ago, but there was a fire in the Capitol at one point, and so basically those doors were used to keep buckets. And so they have a photo of this in the article, and I can link it down below. But they opened one of the doors, it's just really a faucet and a drain, and they would just keep the buckets there because then they could easily fill up the buckets back in the day and then toss them over, you know, whatever was on fire. So we hope you found this video helpful. And please, if you enjoyed it, we'd appreciate it if you could like it. And also subscribe to Melissa's channel if you want more personal finance advice. Specifically, if you are a congressional staffer managing tours and you're learning about the TSP, check out some of her videos. They are awesome. I'm learning stuff about the TSP each and every day. And if you are interested in more about government and politics and my experiences on the Hill, please subscribe to my channel. So thank you all so much for watching.
See you guys in the next video.
Bye for now.